Before Lorenzo became ill with ALD, I was very lucky. I won a Fulbright scholarship to the United States. I was asked by the World Bank, which had hired me, to go to the Comoro Islands with the task of revamping the island economy. In those islands, my wife Lorenzo and myself spent 3 happy years, despite mosquitoes, malaria, and electricity interruptions. Lorenzo was very happy there. He enjoyed swimming and fishing. We had rented a beautiful house with a terrace overlooking the ocean. After a couple of months, he had learned French with no American accent. He became friend with Umori, a boy of 18 years of age. Despite the difference of age, they became very good friends. Lorenzo taught Umori English and Umori taught him some words of Comorian. Within a month, Lorenzo was used to his new life. Our terrace overlooking the sea, a small mosque and a shipyard where both were built had become his enchanted world. Back in the United States, Lorenzo started to show a strange behavior. He was irritable. He could not get along with his classmates, and he slurred words. Then one day his mother was reading to him a children's story. When he said, "Mommy, could you please read louder?" We brought him to a laryngoiatra doctor who said there was nothing wrong with his ears and suggested to have Lorenzo visited by a neurologist. Following his advice, we selected Dr. Fishman, one of Washington's top neurologists. He told us that Lorenzo had ALD, an inherited disease without any remedy. We should go home and make him comfortable. Instead, we went to the nearest library, which was the National Health Library. We soon discovered that the world authority on ALD was Hugo Moser, president of the Kennedy Krieger Institute for Handicapped Children. We made an appointment with him and he confirmed Dr. Fishman's diagnosis. He told us that the main culprit in ALD were the very long-chain fatty acid, detectable by simple blood test. Boys who had elevated very long-chain fatty acid were destined to have the disease. He added that ALD was a genetic disorder coming from the mother. Before leaving, he asked Dr. Moser if there was any way to fight the disease. He said that we should try a diet aimed to lower the very long-chain fatty acid. This diet was deprived of any fat, except that derived from chicken breast. We tried this diet for several weeks, but with no success. The very long-chain fatty acid remained at the same level. In our initial research at the library of the National Institute of Health, we had learned that doctors specializing in ALD and lipids worked in isolation. We felt that this was an unsatisfactory state of affairs and went about remedying it. Thus, Michele and I conceived the idea of organizing the first international symposium on ALD. We talked to Dr. Moser, who approved of our idea. He said, however, that he did not have enough money to fund the symposium. Michela took out her checkbook and wrote him a check of $5,000. We asked him whether we could be present at the symposium. He said, yes, provided that you shut up. The symposium took place in a conference room of the Kennedy Krieger Institute in Baltimore in October 1984. 38 doctors from all over the world were in attendance. The meeting was very stimulating and many ideas were thrown around, yet no miraculous solution emerged. Dr. Rizzo, however, said that he had incubated ALD fibroblast with olive oil for some time and found out that the very long-chain fatty acid had somewhat decreased. He also said that the oil should be in a triglyceride form, otherwise it would spoil the intestinal tract of the patient. Back at home, Michela called all the oil-producing firms in the US. After several attempts, she got lucky. The doctor of a firm in Ohio told her that they had such an oil, GT. And GT stands for glycerol reolate. And they will send her a bottle. We administered to Lorenzo, and indeed his very long-chain fatty acid were reduced. In the second day of the symposium, Dr. Rizzo mentioned that in one of his experiments with ALD, fibroblast types of cells found in connective tissue, he had found that olive oil would lower the very long-chain fatty acid in mice. He added, however, that it should be given to humans in triglyceride form. Otherwise, it would spoil their intestinal tract. At home the next day, Michela called hundreds of firms to see whether any of them had GT. Eventually, she got lucky. The director of a firm in Ohio, Mr. McIntyre, told her that they had an ample reserve of the triglyceride, which they had processed for industrial uses. He sent us a few bottles of the oil, and we began to cook all Lorenzo's food with it. I reviewed upward of 200 articles on fatty acid metabolism conducted over the previous 10 years. In these experiments, different rats were fed different fats. The rats were then put down and the type of fat containing their bodies examined. I gradually begin to discern a pattern. Rats that were fed GT, which corresponded to the formula C18-1, had less very long-chain fatty acid compared with those fed other oils. One April night in 1985, I had an inspiration. F-oleic acid, a monounsaturated fatty acid, cut the very long-chain fatty acid levels in half, then adding erucic acid and another monounsaturated acid, C22-1, could do the trick. When this idea came to me, I was in the master bedroom keeping watch on Lorenzo. As I came down for breakfast the following morning, I told Michela, I've got it. A few weeks earlier, I'd bragged that if I had a computer, I would have solved the problem. Michela said, Bravo, Papa. You did it even without a computer. Because of this discovery, I was awarded an honorary degree from the University of Stirling in Scotland on February 26, 1991. The award read, Augusto and Michele O'Donnell's major achievement was to predict on theoretical grounds that a specified oil would alleviate the symptoms of AD, and equally important, they proved that their theory worked. I suggested to doctors dealing with AD sufferers to administer Lorenzo's oil to their patients, but they unanimously refused my proposal. The medical establishment was convinced that administering euric acid to children was dangerous. They cited several pieces of medical literature showing that euric acid leads to heart lipidosis in rodents. When I mentioned my idea to Hugo Moser, he was at first skeptical, in keeping with the medical community's aversion to feeding us euric acid would be performation, would mean performating the people's hearts. I did not abandon my idea and consulted with the three top world specialists in euric acid, two from Canada and one from France. While the Frenchman and one of the Canadians were non-committal, the other Canadian, Dr. John K. G. Kramer, was forthcoming. He assured me over the phone that erucic acid had been unfairly bad-mouthed and that it would be completely safe if fed to humans. When I asked him for the proof behind his assertion, he told me that he and several others colleagues had recently edited a book, High and Low Euric Acid Rapeseed Oil. That was reported in the Academic Press Canada 1983. This book demonstrated that erucic acid was completely safe. I asked him to send me a copy of the book, which he did. I asked him to send me a copy of the book, which he did. I sent out a report to all researchers on ALD, proposing to them a therapy based on the administration of a mixture of oleic and erucic acid. The report was entitled The Interplay of Saturated and Monounsaturated Fatty Acid, a New Therapy for ALD. The evidence that erucic acid was innocuous in people was most compelling. An experiment conducted in India had compared the hearts of 100 people who had died in accident in the Madras region, where mustard oil, an oil rich on euric acid, was the common aliment. With the hearts of 100 people died of accidents in Indian region where they consume other types of oils. Researchers found no difference between the two sets of arts. Comforted by this idea, I persisted with the idea I had originally. And Michela again got on the phone and called all the US firms that conceivably could produce euric acid. However, she could not find any company in the US that would touch a product with such a bad reputation. Michela then turned her search to England and eventually found Croda International, which was willing to manufacture erucic acid. Croda called the chemist Don Sotheby back from retirement and asked him to put together a sample of the oil. Don, who played himself in the movie Lorenzo's Oil, obliged and went back to work. After about 9 months, he sent us a bottle of the euric oil, of the euric acid oil, shortly before Christmas 1987. This achievement was anything but easy. The euric acid had to be extracted from rapeseed by a complex procedure. When I received it, I mixed it with oleic acid in a proportion of 3 to 1, and Lorenzo oil was born. I asked Deidra, whom I afterwards referred to as our favorite lab rat, to go on a diet using the oil. She accepted, and I cooked all her food with the oil. Since I did not want to risk losing a sister-in-law, I asked her to get a cardiogram every few days. Victory! Deidra started the diet cum oil regimen a few days before Christmas, a tough time for any kind of dieting. After 12 days, I sent a sample of her blood to the lab to be analyzed. The lab was Cosan Moser Lab in Baltimore. When I called the technician who knew about her records, he said that there must have been a mix-up. No trace of very long-chain fatty acid had been found in her blood sample. What a wonderful moment. I told him that it wasn't a mistake. We immediately started to cook all Lorenzo's food with the oil bearing his name. After only a few days, his very long-chain fatty acid were also brought down to normal level. The healthy serpent that had brought so much grief to our family had been tamed for good. Michele and I felt that we were coming out of our personal hell and that there was light and hope, just like in Dante Inferno, when Dante and Virgil leave hell and exclaim upon seeing the beautiful starry night. After so much darkness, and we, this is the citation of the Dante line, and we emerge to gaze upon the stars again. Lorenzo soon began to be able to communicate with his mother by moving his head from left to right. Because of this discovery, I was awarded an honorary degree from the University of Stirling in Scotland on February 26, 1991. The award read, Augusto and Michele Odone major achievement was to predict on theoretical ground that a specified oil would alleviate the symptom of ALD, and, equally important the proof that their theory worked. To inform families around the world of our success with Lorenzo Soil, Michela and I wrote an article in the Journal of Pediatric Neuroscience, published both in English and Italian. Reasoning that rats are rodents and people are human, I did not give up on my idea. We circulated a paper reporting our results to all doctors dealing with LD, as well as to several families affected by this disease. Since then, the oil has been administered to several LD boys, and in all of them, it led to the normalization of very long-chain fatty acid levels. I sensed that the story of Lorenzo Soil was important, and I wanted to be written in a major magazine. I convinced Mary Hager, a journalist of the Newsweek Washington Bureau, to listen to my story. After a few meetings in her office, she was persuaded that the story was true and informed the Newsweek headquarters in New York, and they published an article about the story, which was written with much verve by Jerry Adler. After this article, several magazines and newspapers became interested in the story. Articles were written by Reader Digest, the Baltimore Sun, and other newspapers. We were also selected by People magazine Extra in the fall of 1991 for a piece on the heroes and underdogs who had beaten the odds. In addition, an Italian director who had read Newsweek article made a television movie for Italian television with well-known Italian actors. The best rendition of the story, however, was by Russell Miller, published in the London Sunday Times on January 29, 1990. Several film producers from the US and abroad approached me and asked me to give them an option on the story. Most of them told me how much money we would make if we gave them the rights to make the movie. I did not like their commercial approach. But then one day in February 1990, someone called me from Australia. He said that he had read the London Sunday Times story, and if what was said there was true, he would like to make a movie. As I found out later on, the gentleman who had called from Australia was George Miller, the director of Mad Max and The Witches of Eastwick, and later on, Babe and Happy Feet. The last movie, Happy Feet, got an Oscar. I was impressed with him. He did not talk of options or money, but said that he liked to describe heroes in his picture. I asked him how he would verify whether the story was true. He said that he would do so the first time he came to Europe, which he predicted would be soon. Indeed, a few weeks later, George arrived in London. There he met Francesco, who showed him the Italian television film Voglia di Vivere. By the way, Voglia di Vivere was the actress there was a very well-known actress, Sandra George told him that he could do much better. In the meantime, we had decided to go to Wintergreen, a mountain resort 4 hours drives from Washington. One day, while we were there, without any advance notice, George Miller and the screenwriter Nick Wright knocked at our door. To take a closer look at us, the two had rented a chalet near ours. We invited them for dinner several times. They seemed to like my cooking, particularly my risotto alla milanese. Lorenzo soil is a mixture of two oils, oleic acid and auricic acid. The first is made in the US, the second is manufactured by Crude International, a company based in England. I suggested to the doctors dealing with ALD sufferers to administer Lorenzo soil to their patients, but they unanimously refused my proposal. The medical establishment was convinced that feeding the ALD children with an oil enriched with erucic acid would be dangerous. They cited several pieces of medical literature showing that erucic acid leads to heart lipidosis in rodents. As a result, the rats' hearts would be perforated. Reasoning that rats are rodents and people are humans, I did not give up on my idea. After the movie came out in late 1992, there was a massive backlash from the medical establishment with adverse articles in Nature, the New York Times, and the Toronto Stars, to mention just a few. Evidently, ALD specialists could not stomach the idea that two laypersons had beaten them to a therapy capable of normalizing the very long chain fatty acid levels. While all doctors admitted the effectiveness of Lorenzo soil in normalizing the very long chain fatty acid, they denied its efficacy at clinical level. Michele and I were made to feel like criminals for giving false hopes to AD families. The controversy lasted 10 years, until the conclusion of an international study in 2005, which followed 104 patients in the US and Europe. Coordinated by Dr. Moser, financed by the FDA, the study confirmed the preventive efficacy of the oil in boys in whom the disease had not yet manifested itself. Boys who followed the therapy and lowered their very long fatty acid accumulation were significantly less likely to get the manifestation of the childhood, a more severe form of the disease. The study unequivocally showed that the very long chain fatty acids are not only an LD marker, but that they are also implicated in its pathogenesis. Dr. Moser wanted me to be a co-author of the article and be listed in the last and most important position of the title. The Malin Project. How did we come to the Malin Project? Why did we organize the Malin Project? When we were convinced that we had stopped the progression of the disease, Michele and I asked ourselves what else we could do for Lorenzo. The answer was straightforward enough. Restore the myelin in his central nervous system, which had been destroyed by the disease. Myelin is the insulating sheet surrounding nerve cells, the white matter coating our nerves, enabling them to conduct impulses between the brain and other parts of the body. It consists of a layer of protein packed between two layers of lipid. Myelin is produced by specialized cells, oligodendrocytes, in the central nervous system and Schwann cells in the peripheral one. Myelin sheets wrap themselves around axons, the thread-like extension of neurons that make up nerve fibers. Each oligodendrocyte can myelinate several axons. Myelin can be destroyed by hereditary neurodegenerative disorders such as the leukodystrophies and by acquired diseases such as multiple sclerosis. With this in mind, we set up the Myelin Project, a non-profit organization. If we succeeded in this second endeavor, Lorenzo, along with hundreds of thousands of patients with multiple sclerosis, and might reacquire some of his lost function. After researching who were the doctors active in the field of remyelination, we invited them to join the Myelin Project. The best rendition of the story was Russell Miller, published in the London Sunday Times on January 29, 1990. George Miller read the Sunday Times piece while he was having breakfast in his house in Sydney. He called me and said, "If the story is true, I'm going to make a movie." He came to Italy and gave him the name of several doctors, and I give the name of several doctors working on LD. He was convinced that the story was true and decided to ask Universal Studios to finance the movie. We also discussed who would be the actors. I proposed that I be played by Marcello Mastroianni. Modest has never been part of Diodone's family. However, he did not agree. He thought that Marcello was too old for the part. He said that Nick Nolte would instead be a good candidate. As for Michela, he proposed Michelle Pfeiffer. Later on, Michelle came to our house. She was beautiful, and all the males in the Odone household, including Lorenzo, watched her in ecstasy. However, she eventually had to drop out because her brother had a serious motorbike accident. Lastly, the part of Dr. Moser was played by Peter Ustinov. Now we come to a very difficult subject, which is the ethical considerations. Should pregnant mothers who are known to be careless interrupt their pregnancy? This is an agonizing question whose answer depends on the culture and values of the parents. Michele and I often ask ourselves what we would have done had we known that we were going to have a child with AD. We both agreed that we would have interrupted the pregnancy despite our being practicing Catholics. It would not have been for selfish reasons. Rather, we thought we had no right to give birth to a child destined to be severely handicapped. Another complex ethical issue is whether drug companies are right in refusing to study orphan disease like LD. The reason is that orphan disease population is small and there is little profit, if any, in catering to its needs. Is this an acceptable reason? Perhaps not, but companies are companies, and their mission is to make a profit rather than suffer a loss and survive in a very competitive trade. The story of Lorenzo and his parents has an important inspirational aspect. It will help people within a serious disease, like for example MS, not to feel isolated. I expect that people afflicted by a life-threatening disease will follow our example and not give up on themselves or their dear ones. Lastly, if any of you interview viewers would like to learn more about Lorenzo's story or the Malin project, they may purchase a book I have recently published entitled Lorenzo and His Parents. Following this link, I hope you will enjoy reading it. Augusto Nunes.